gena nyepamne ne ku ibuloke nongoto ni beti sola ibuloke dato ni betoto
Mingi Mingi Congo
Lamin
na
Lamin te jibe norin te nyame Lamin
kamana
wulo kono nyinta mo Lamin
Pabilenki
muna ngata afamole
haina
ngata ngoto le fabrama
Mingi Baba nyole
no ngoto le fabrama fabrama
jumala mu
ndele bare muso
lunda mana jamani mbere
alindo bari ngoto man kontande
bari jamani fana na mudu ma kontan
ngoto minaka ngalamin de fom filitala lamin jibe nori nyaala
lamin ida siran sama ne benki yala so tol sayni no bo mo lokko momo
ngoto
nam
itedinte yalo ne lamin hakkilo diata bake karambu ngoto anu santen ministry ko di ngole si suwo ko amake ko do holi
si bitun
bagona de
ala ni nyab ala ni ko kede namo balo
ala ni na ko na karta bulo be dam ala ni je
ngoto
nam
ngoto mon kontan fere
jamani mu nekata
ite ka lamin ki wulo ko no nyintay mon ko do fete malo lamin moy kala karango
jamani karamol be wulo ko nako
karambu wol ma soro ndama ke kom holiday lem ngoto dini wonyanta silala ala karango la moy yamen kamen fue man kontan andamande
alla nyin kombo courant adanda la kombo len do la jankara mol soro ndar do kamen courant ma daro la kombo e to ndol fana na kara mol soro nje kara mol soro lamina dara lo nyino la aman dara fe na so kon ala mu nekela
am lamin ide fayde malon kon le sinol be ke kar radio to
nga fine
e ko yana di mod lamin ya mu na fonye
kabin mina kan ntambita nteri maning Fatu
ha
tambide la sugal ala dinngol bebe siri be la moy ka
faru danso am fana tambida jele ni subala da ngaje dinngol be jet talanta nen kili warol e be seri jele
sa lamin fadante ku kili wo keno la ba lamin bita ka wulo ko no nyun taymo alami
aman dara fenela
ite dine ko ni man si yakar da moy radio to balon na
muneka ke afonye ba nyara ni alon
telentel jikot
afonye ba munebe ke
ite balon tel be cikritel ni man karana mbasa malaya ay tarije
par ñarande kombo courant ho findira kombo ide na raje den sonka bay ko lamin manya tala wulo ko adu karam wolbe so dafa nyembe
ko to wole nati ba ngalle ni lamin kuntal kombo courant o ka fa mere kombo courant asototal wala kinay ko e si suwo kono bari ni ko e si suwo kono be karangol di ke la radio ni tele masoto to nyaay man tele soto da bongo bar radio be bulan koto batiri sa nga ay si ay alamo
sa do kala nyaadi
ko ta o bulaji
abe kala nyaadi
kamun ke nyaadi
radio abe wala moy la be mona falaje
ibe la karandirol kala jele
ti talle be radio ko men ka karandirol
ila subject no baby jele baby jele
wala nanga coco moy fa dan so wolya ngombe tambi kana ngadi ni wolje be ikadum bungo ko kala fa mo
asototal de
la min mala be kara wala de
bari
lafta ideal ya second wala
ma ko ndé ko folle sini lamba ndé le sini lo ne ba
say mba foke fango ye wulindi tabat yu fana bulata ko ko me yen nati jambi la min nyanta karana ndel be jiko be nyineka wulo kana ta kilar ya bambalo yo be bulaje ko to dinni ngoy si ayala le sino la moy radio
wara ka munda karamo man soro la min nyanta kara si so na regla
la sila le ayala le sino
ndale ko korna ko smolo
kilar ya
be ngala ko momo say mi do ni ko no kera
mengi bro
ko do la da barro sa no radio ba no bari woro radio ni abe jele ba do ngamra do man nyara nyara ro fram ko fendi mo la la min tayra ba do sa
bara ten ku folo ajibe nori nya la bi tamete ku
mengi mun na re
ko
teku
bari ko do famo ke
ja o ma nani sizol le ke je kisigi man sizol no bari nyambu kino ni manya na ka fendi ni nambe ko rozor la ga
ngalle nimbeta de be nyambo do dilanna
nyara nim ko ritin pennat nyara nata
ko to bari famo ke da
ngata bungono tambi bungono nyara ngando go fele ko ke baru nganda ni pelo la dija
iyo awa beter la
bungono bismillah bisu diara
ye fongo tanka sina dolu tanka koro ta koro
Hello viewers and listeners, welcome yet to another mathematics lesson for the upper basic level. And all through our previous lessons, we have gone through solving equations. Now we move to word problems on equations, okay? Now, algebra is often used to solve problems given in words and sentences. To solve such problems, follow the following steps. Step 1, read the information given. They said reading the information given to you carefully and understanding it is almost halfway towards answering a question. So always read the question very carefully so that you can know what information and also what are you required to find. It's very important. Then step 2, choose a letter to represent the unknown quantity or value. All right, whatever you are required to find, use a letter to represent that. That is your step number 2. Then step number 3, use the information to find two equal expressions. Then write these expressions in equation. So use the information given to you to find two equal expressions and then use those two expressions as an equation. And then step number 4, solve the equation you have and use the solution to answer. Equation you have, step 3, it to answer your question, all right? And then step number 5, finally, use the original information given to check your solution. It is always important to check whether your answer is correct, okay? If we look at example, it says Fatu thinks of a number. She added 6 to it, and the result is 17. Find Fatu's number. It's important to read the question very carefully. So here what we know is that Fatu thought of a number. Afterwards, she added 6 to that number, and then the result was now 17. So we want to find what was Fatu's number. Now, let's see what happens here. Of course, first we know that Fatu thought of a particular number. We know the number. We don't. So because we don't know which number Fatu thought of, we can use data to represent Fatu's number. All right? So our solution here we don't know the number. We can start by saying let Fatu's number be x. Of course, you can choose a different variable if you want to, but I'm choosing to use x in this case, all right? So we know now the number Fatu thought of is x. So we're starting from there. So Fatu thought of x. Now, after thinking of x, what did Fatu do? She added 6 to the number. That means plus, all right? And then after adding 6 to the number, what happened? The result was 17. That means this is equal to 17. So you can see what we have done here is that created two expressions from the question and then use them to form x plus 6 is an expression, and then the 17 as well is also an expression. And we have used those two expressions to form an equation. Our equation is x plus 6 is equal to 17. From here now, all you do is to solve. And of course, we have learned many times before how to solve an equation. We want to find the value for x here. the x is there with plus 6. So therefore, we need to undo the plus 6. And we know that the inverse of addition is subtraction. So therefore, we are going to subtract 6 from both sides. So from the left-hand side, also subtract 6 from the right-hand side. And then what happens? The 6 will cancel out the 6 on this side, on the left-hand side. So now you are left with what? X only on the left-hand side. That is now equal to 17 minus 6 should give us 11. Fatu's number was 11. What do we do? Let's check if our answer makes sense. If you go back to the question, was that Fatu thought of a number, and now we know the number is 11. Then she added 6 to it, and the result is 17. So now let's see if you put 11 in place of x, whether the two sides of the equation, if they are equal, then our answer is correct. If they are not equal, then we have done something wrong along the way. We'll have plus 6 is equal to 17. X 7. 11 plus 6 is equal to 7. And 11 plus 6 surely gives us 17. And 17 is definitely equal to 17. So it means our answer was right. So Fatu's number was 11. Right, then move on to a second example. It says when 2 is subtracted from a number, the answer is 12. Find the number. All right? When 2 is subtracted from a number, the answer is 12. Again, what we know is 2 was subtracted from a particular number. But which number, we don't know. So, subtracted from, we're going to use a letter to represent that number. So you can again start by saying, let the number be, let's say, okay, so we know the number is y. Now, we know 2 was subtracted from that. So the 2 was subtracted from y. It means from the y, you subtract 2. That should be the meaning. You are subtracting 2 from the number. So that is y minus 2, because our number in this case, we have chosen y to represent it. Now, after subtracting 2 from y, the answer was now equal to 12. Again, what have we done? We have used our equation to form two expressions, equate them to form an equation. Because the y minus 2 is an expression and another expression, and we use those two expressions to form an equation. Those two, if you simplify, should end up being the same. Now, once we have got our equation, the rest is now easy, because solving equations is now very easy for us. We know we want to isolate the y, but the y is there with minus 2, that's a subtraction. So we need to undo that subtraction, and we know the inverse for subtraction is addition. So therefore we need to add 2 to both sides of the equation. So we're going to add 2 to the left hand side, You also add 2 to the right hand side. And let's see what happens. The 2 will cancel out from the left hand side. Now, you are only left with y on that side, being equal to, if you add 12 plus 2, that should give us 14. So it means our number again in this case is 14. But again, let's prove and see if our answer makes sense. Okay? What we are given was 2 is chose y to represent the number. So that's why we said y minus 2. And then the answer was 12. So that's why we had y minus 2 is equal to. Now let's put our answer in place of y and see if the two sides of the equation would be equal. Okay? Now let's prove that. We need space to write on that. Let's see. What we had was y minus is equal to 12. Y we know now is 14. So 14 minus 2 is equal to 12. If you subtract 14 or 2 from each other, you would get 12. Is definitely equal to 12. So again, that our answer here is also correct. So therefore, we can move along to a third example. When the product of 3 and a certain number is increased by 1, the result is 22. Find the number. Very carefully. It says when the product of 3 and a number is increased by 1, the result is 22. Find the number. Now, before we even start to work, let's try to pick out some key terms here. And there are two terms that are particularly important here. One, the product. And then second is increase. Again, we have come across this in our previous lessons. Product, if we remember, means multiplication. All right? And increase also, if you recall, is simply addition. But again, we know that when the product of 3 and a certain number, a number which we don't know, all right? So because we don't know which number that was, you can always start by assigning a letter to that number. So yet again, we could say, let the number be x. Okay? So we know our number is x. And we know the product of 3 and that number. That means if you multiply 3 by our number, which is x, is increased by 1. Increase, we know, is addition. So 1 to that product, the answer which you get as the result is 22. Now that is what we have at the beginning. Of course, we need to simplify this a bit further. We know 3 times will simply give us 3x. Bring down the plus 1 is equal to 22. Now that is the equation which we now have, and all we do from here now is just to solve for x from here. We want to isolate the x. But first, we need to undo the addition. Remember, when solving equations, you reverse the order of operation, right? You work backwards through the order. So we need to undo the addition before undoing the multiplication. And we know the inverse of addition is subtraction. So therefore, we will subtract from both sides of the equation. So minus 1 the left hand side, also minus 1 from the right hand side. Then what happens? You now have 1 cancelling out 1 from the left hand side. And what is now left on that left hand side is simply 3x. Now that is equal to, on the right hand side you have 22 minus 1, and 22 minus 1 should give us 21. But is that our answer now? No, that cannot be the answer, because remember we are trying to isolate the x, and still now the x is there with a number or a coefficient. But we know 3x is 3 times, which is a multiplication, and to undo a multiplication you divide. To divide both sides by 3 over 3 over 3, so that 3 will cancel out 3 from the left hand side. Then now you have x being equal to 3 into itself is 1s, 3 into 21 should give us 7 times. So our answer is 7. But like always prove your answer to be so. Alright? There's no point in moving along when you are not sure whether you're wrong. So always take your time to go back to your, what were you told? That when the product of 3 is, now that is 3, is increased by 1, that is plus 1, the result is 22. That was what gave us 3x. So if we put 7 in, and so by now, you can walk ahead of me and see by the time I get to my answer whether it is going to be the same answer that you. It says when a certain number is subtracted from 10 and the result is multiplied by 2, the final result is 4. Find the number. Now that's a lot of words there. Again, let's look at it very carefully. It says when a certain number is subtracted from 10 and is multiplied by 2, the final answer or the final is 4. Now let's find this number. First, we don't know the particular number we are talking about here, right? And we know whenever you don't know the value of a number, you can always use a letter to represent it. Okay? So again, we can start by saying our solution would be, let the number be x. Let the number be x, okay? We know the number was subtracted from 10, which means from 10 you subtract the x. That gives you 10 minus x. And then what happened? The result of doing that was multiplied by 2. That means you now have just done right now, you multiply all that by 2. And here the use of the brackets is very important, because if you don't use the brackets, you may run into some trouble. So employ your brackets here, all right? So when you subtract the number from 10 and multiply all that by 2, your final result was now 4. Is equal to 4. Right. All we do from here now is just to solve this equation. And we know, because what we have is 2 into 10 minus x being equal to 4, we must apply our distributive property here, which means we need to expand the brackets, which by now we know how to do. You simply multiply every term inside the bracket by the term outside the bracket. We will have 2 times 10, which gives you 20, minus 2 times x should give us 2x, and that is equal to 4. Now, that is now our brackets gone. So what we do from now is just to solve. All right? We want to isolate the x, but first we need to undo this 20. This 20 is positive, all right? And to undo an addition, you subtract. So therefore, we're going to subtract 20 from both sides of the equation. So we'll say minus 20 from the left-hand side, also minus 20 from the right-hand side. Then let's see what happens. The 20s from the left-hand side will cancel each other out. And what we are left with there now is the negative 2x. So you bring down the negative 2x. So you get minus 2x is equal to 4 minus 2. If we subtract 20 from 4, that should give us negative 16. Okay? So now we have negative 2x being equals to negative 16. Negative 2x actually reads as negative 2 times x. So that's a multiplication. And to undo that multiplication, divide. So divide both sides by the negative 2. Both the left and the right hand side, divide them by negative 2. And then the negative 2 will cancel out the negative 2 from the left hand side. And what you are left with there now is, you are now left with only x from the left hand side being equal to. Now on the right hand side, you can see that both the 16 and the 2 are negative. So therefore those negatives will cancel each other out, because we know a negative divided by a negative will give you a positive. So each other out and they turn into positive. Then now 2 into itself will be once, and 2 will go into 16 exactly 8 times. So our number in this case was 8. Prove it. Go to the question that when this number was subtracted from 10 and then the result was multiplied by 2, the final answer or the final result is 4. That was the question, and that was what we used to arrive at 2 into 10 being equal to 4. All right? So now let's use that to prove our answer. We had 2 into 10 minus x should be equal to 4. All right? We know now our x is 8. So we're going to write 8 in place of x. And that will now give us 2 into 10 minus 8, because x is now 8. Will that be equal to 4? All right? If you further simplify this, what you have, 2 minus 8 should give us 2, and that is equals to 4. If 2 times, you definitely get 4, and 4 equal to 4. Our solution was right, because the two sides of the equation are still equal. Right, then we can move along to one last example before I will give you an assignment to work with. Example number 5. It says, if 1/3 of a number is added to 1/5 of the same, the result is 8. Find number. All right? 1/3 of a particular number is added to 1/5 of the same number, then the answer becomes 8. Now, what is that number? Let's follow the same procedure again as before. We don't know what the number is, so therefore, we are going to use a letter to represent that number. Let's say x again. If you don't want to use x, you can use a different alphabet or letter of the alphabet. So let the number be x. So our number here is x. Now 1/3, all right? 1/3 would be, we know from the term there, third is 3. And 1/3 simply means 1 out of 3. That is 1 over 3 of a number. And we know in maths, of is multiplication. All right? That means times the number. And now we know our number is x. So that's 1/3 times x is added. That is plus 1/5 of the same number. 1/5. All right? 1/5, that's 1 over 5. Of the same number. Of is times. Times the same number, and the number is still x. Now, when you add 1/3 of this number to 1/5 of the same number, what you had as an answer was 8. So after doing all this, that should be now equal to 8. So now we need to use this to find the value of x, and that will be our number. But again, we know we can simplify this a bit further, because when you multiply 1 over 3 times x to x 3, that is simply because x can be written as x over 1. X is x, and 3 times 1 is 3. So you get x over 3 plus 1/5, or therefore if you multiply 1/5 by x, because x is x over 1, that is 1 times x, which is x over 5 times 1 also gives you 5, and that is 8. Now this is what we need to solve now. But what we are having here, all right? So we need to get rid of the fractions. How do we do that? We look at the denominators, which are 3 and 5, and then find their lowest common multiple. That's their LCM. All right? That is the smallest number that both 3 and 5 divide with no remainder. And we know the smallest number that can be divided by 3 and 5 without any remainder would be 15. So therefore, we need to multiply every term in the equation by 15. Okay? So we have 15, that's the LCM, being multiplied by x over 3 plus the same 15 being multiplied by x over 5, and that is 15 times 8. Okay, so you multiply each term of the equation by the LCM. Then now you can further simplify this. We know 3 can go into itself once. Into 15 would be 5 times. 5 times x should be 5x. Plus 5 into 5 would be once. 5 into 50 would be 3 times. 3 times x should give us 3x. And that is equal to 15 times 8. If you multiply 15 times 8 very carefully, that should give us 120. Yes, 120. Then from here now, just simplify. We know that 5x plus 3x, those two terms are alike. And if you add 5x plus 3x, that should simply give us 8x equals 120. 8x reads as 8 times x. That is a multiplication, which you undo by dividing. Over 8 over 8 cancels out from this side. X is left there now. 8 can go into 8 once. 8 into 12 would only be once. But there will be a remainder of 4. Okay? And then 8 into 40 should give us 5. So therefore, our number was 15. All right? Again, if you put that 15 back to our equation, right, okay? Now, before I leave you, I'm going to leave you with at least 2 questions to try at home, so that when we meet again, we will solve it together. So here they go. Only 2 questions, all right? Question number 1 says, when 2 times a number is reduced, the answer is 7. Find the number. When a number is reduced by 1, the answer is 7. Find the number. That is question number 1. Question number 2, Lamin multiplies a number by 4 and then added 3. The answer is 23. Find Lamin's number. Lamin multiplies a number by 4 and then added 3. The answer is 23. Find Lamin's number. Use that to keep yourself busy and try to stay safe, practicing personal hygiene, and then staying away from crowds. Thank you.